He did supplementary.
Yeah, we see.
Yeah. Morning, this House is in session. A resumption of government business. Army Leader, government business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that you do now leave the chair and that the House resolve itself into Standing Finance Committee for the consideration of the estimates.
The question that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into a Standing Finance Committee. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it.
This House is now in Standing Finance Committee.
Madam Chairman, Head 82, Ministry of Environment and National Beautification, in the name of the Honorable Minister of that ministry, in the sum of $39,113,756.
We invite the Honorable Minister into the room.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Morning.
Good morning, colleagues. It's a great privilege for me to serve as Minister of the Environment and National Beautification. I want to thank the Honorable Prime Minister for this opportunity. I also want to give thanks to the people who elected me as well, to be able to sit in this chair, which I never thought I would ever be in. Probably sitting somewhere else because of your struggles and upbringing, including the prisons. But fortunately, I am here. I am here with the required compassion to represent the interests of the people from whom I sprung. So I want to tell you how deeply I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to you this morning about the performance of the ministry. I'm assuming that it is my right also to invite all the officers from my ministry to come and be part and parcel of this assembly in the well.
Yes, sir, you have the right.
And I would just like the officers that are selected to come forward.
Honorable Member, you have 10 minutes for your opening remarks. And please move the head at the end.
Madam Chairman, I speak on the presentation of the estimates of head 82. And I have my officers here, my permanent secretary, and the other officers within the ministry. I have with me Ms. Daphne Kelman, permanent secretary, Steve Devenish, Mr. Anthony, who is the Natural Heritage Department director, Anthony Headley, who is the director of the Environmental Protection Department, Kathy Andreaton, financial controller, Janice Jones, general manager, acting general manager of the SSA, Wayne Alves, general manager acting of the National Conservation Commission, Mr. Travis Sinkler, senior environmental officer, policy research, planning and information unit, Mr. Ricardo Marshall, project manager coordinator the coordination unit, Mr. Nigel Jones, senior technical officer, National Botanical Gardens, Mr. Ron Goodridge, environmental officer, policy research, planning and information unit, and those I think I've covered all those that are present here with me. Madam Chair, 4 decades ago, this ministry was perceived as insignificant to be a central part of the governance of this country. It was said then that such a task may only require 2 hours of work a day. That is not my experience. I guess over the last 4 decades, there would have been lots of information, lots of unavoidable demands on the ministry, lots of scientific evidence to justify the presence of a ministry that, in my view, today is unavoidable, and its presence would remain a major etch in the landscape of the governance of the Western world, not only Barbados, but across the Western world. I'm just trying to see if I can remove any clouds of doubt of the importance of this ministry, and that although there are departments that are equivalent to what some ministries are likely to be in other parts of the world, and I'm talking about departments like the sanitation services and the NCC, the reality is that this ministry is made up of a number of departments, and I will speak to that eventually. But what I want to say to you, Madam Chair, is that I would like to place my presentation within the context of some philosophical justifiable reason for the existence of the ministry and why it was an unavoidable plank in the governance of Barbados. And I will stretch it far to the establishing of other forms of governance and other types of thinking that occur at some point when existential circumstances or crises emerge in the body politics, but also in the challenges of the survival of man and in the challenges of the evolution of man and all other living species. Now, 18th century, 19th century, latter 18th century, 19th century, you would have had some of the greatest thinkers across the Western world. Unfortunately, I can't make much reference because the history books did not make much reference to the major African contributions in the circumstances. But we had good thinkers, must be respected, like Herbert Spencer. We had we had Herbert Spencer, we had Darwin, who spoke about the survival of the fittest, because he recognized that because of the changing environment and because of the shortage of food in comparison with the growing of the population, that we had to find some equilibrium in order that these two necessities would survive. The chances are that if some equilibrium did not come about, those on the margins, the most vulnerable people in the society, would be no more. We had other thinkers who felt that natural disaster would also bring some level of balance to the existence of man and other living species. So in general, what you were saying is that the most vulnerable in the system was on the front line of becoming non-existent if the required changes and adjustments were not made. Then came the industrial period, where some of the things that we are now fighting with, moving out of feudalism, some of the things that we are now fighting with, and you know the feudal system itself, we had that military and dominant attitude by those who were landowners in the system. And you had small people just struggling, fighting within the cottage industry and things like that. But with the developments of industrialization, not only as a result of fossil fuel, but also out of the struggles of those who labor within the sugarcane fields, the sugar barons was able to acquire wealth and expand their so-called territories in Europe, France, England, Spain, all of them. And oil was the major source of energy. And today we are now finding means of countering the ramifications of the use of those different forms of energy, different types of energy, and we're looking at things like alternative energy. The ministry now has the responsibility to be in the forefront of coming to being in leading an alternative path, because what was glorious then is not glorious now. The use of fossil fuel and emissions of gas into the atmosphere has created many problems for us. And at the local level, the regional and the international level, there are ministries of the environment now addressing these specific issues. Climate change obviously brought along with it the rising sea levels, the forces of wind change, the hurricanes are now at category 5. We are having problems with drainage systems. We are having problems with water levels. Along with that, there are multiple environmental issues that we have to deal with. So you will recognize that the various departments of the government, with many different functions and responsibilities, the ministry itself has to deal with the biodiversity management, because obviously there are lots of species that we saw before that existed then that are no more. But there are also species that are in danger. And there are also species that we will have to find a way, especially if we perceive them as part of our indigenous indigenous entities within the ecosystem. We'll have to find a way of trying to repopulate the society with these things, like the ass, the donkey. For example, I was speaking with an officer recently, and Dr. Watson was saying to me, but you know there's only one ass in Barbados now. And he said, you know, we should hold that we should even try to increase the population of that ass, because it played such an important role in the development of our people. And in many cases, there are lots of young people can never even capture, even within their imagination, the role that a donkey, which is also considered as an ass, and not in a pejorative sense, but a donkey, the things that we see people doing now starting a vehicle and going 6 meters and then got to stop and then got to start again. The donkey cart and the donkey used to just stop alongside the streets and pick up the waste and so on. So automation has changed that. But obviously we had yellow breast, we had mockingbirds, we had, we're now having problems in relation to the green monkey population. We had there was in St. Philip, and for the first time I saw, what do you call these? Huh? No, there's a gecko lizard. No, there's a guinea bird. We call these birds a great thing, like a fowl walking across the street. I have not seen those peacocks and so on. But those are only some of the species, but there are many others. Sometimes you just put a little spice in the conversation to keep everybody's eyes open so early in the morning. The Policy Research and Planning Implementation Unit, which the officers are working extremely hard because we're looking at restructuring and reforming and so on within the ministry itself. There's a department, the Natural Heritage Department itself, which deal with heritage, natural heritage, not only the animate things, but the inanimate things as well, that belongs to the indigenous people of Barbados. Probably, I'm hoping that we will place greater emphasis on the Afrocentric things, right, more so than the Eurocentric things in relation to preservation. If I have it my way, that's how I will go. But then I have to still represent the collective interests of the institution to which we all belong. The National Botanical Gardens, we're going to speak a lot about that today as well, because that is a dream come true. That is Barbados Garden of Eden, the most beautiful site. People who pass on the perimeters of the Waterfords and to the eastern side of the National Stadium never even knew that this land space exists, furthermore to understand the qualitative nature of the land space there at the Botanical Gardens. The Project Management Coordinating Unit. The sanitation services, of course, that will be a major discussion today, because it is where we took it from, not only in a state of dysfunctionalism, but also overshadowed by a heavy burden of corruption and pollution, right? Which came from those who preside at the optimum point of the institution itself. The Environmental Protection Unit, whose functions deal with air quality across Barbados. We work in collaboration with the Water Authority, the South Coast Storage Plant, the officer, Mr. Headley. He works extremely hard, not only in terms of muscle, but academic application to this work. He has a strong scientific acumen, and I know he applies it as much as he can. He makes sure that we test the water so that the people who enjoy the beaches for recreational purposes, the locals, more so the tourists, which the Minister of Tourism will also be happy to hear. Mr. Headley make sure that the water levels out there, that there's no pollution in the outflow at the South Coast that would affect the lives or the health of any persons who bathe within that given geographical marine space, and as well as terrestrial space as well. The ministry itself has to prioritize, because the challenges are so complex and so demanding, and we have to be reaching targets within such a short period of time that we have to prioritize. We have to look at how we're going to restructure the department for the smooth running of it, because what I have is a structure which I've inherited, and I have to kind of heal fractured relationships as well. And in cases where the duplication or overlapping of responsibilities across various departments, we're going to have to bring some form of rationalization to the order that is there within the ministry. But we're functioning. There might be lots of nominal differentiations within the ministry itself, but in reality, people work very hard collectively interdepartmental responsibilities within the ministry itself. But the ministry doesn't see itself operating as a silo with no interest in what is happening, because I work with the ministry works with the Ministry of Energy and Water Resources. We also know that we have to play a major role in what we do in the area of creating a new architectural arrangement, especially not just for buildings in general, but for buildings for the majority population, which are the small people within various communities, especially in coastal lands like the Orleans, coastal lands like Farnham's Land, Marshall Gap, people who live around Westbury Road, the coastal lands as well. Not only that social class, but the coastal lands around Carlisle Bay. The architects have to also play their role in designing the correct types of buildings as a form of mitigation or adaptation to the changes in the climate, because the change.
I ask you to wrap up shortly.
The changes. Okay, madam. The changes in the climate, as I indicated before, give them rise to high water levels, and this is a flat topography, and the waters could easily find themselves coming inland at any time, especially during Category 5 or beyond hurricanes. Madam Chair, I hope that I am explicit enough, at least to give a framework, a mirror of what constitutes the Ministry of the Environment. And I'm sure that with the help of the officers who I have here, who I have no doubt is quite capable of assisting, that you will even get greater clarity as the proceedings continue. So thank you very much for listening to me. Can I move that head 83? 82 stands par.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I thank the Honorable Minister for his opening comments and setting the stage for this focus on this head. First up this morning, I thank him for the work he's doing in the ministry, and I thank him for the level of representation he brings to the constituency of St. Michael East, in which I reside. And I know he's a man with his ears to the ground, and I will put to him a question shortly, Madam Chair, and I'm sure his response will provide proof of that he listens well to what his people are saying. So I will forego my opening comments and go straight to a question or two. My honorable friend was very philosophical in his opening comments and took us back a couple of centuries to the philosophical thought that dominated then with reference to how societies evolved and how in the process of that evolution societies dealt with the problems and the tensions which arose, and he referred to the era of people like Spencer, who would have posited the view that population growth, which is exponential, tends to pose quite a bit of problems through that growth in a context where the provision of goods, services, food supplies cannot keep match with that exponential growth in population, because the expansion of that is linear, whereas that of population explodes exponentially. When it happens, that a population dynamic is such that it creates heavy demand upon the ability to provide for the populace, for society to provide for its population, then the regulator, in this case the state, and in that case the state, in this case the state as well, would have to step in and address the tensions arising out of that. I think, of course, he also drew reference to people like Malthus. Some people say Malthus. A similar theory that demands outstrip the capacity often for societies to provide for its citizens, creating challenges and tensions. I would imagine, therefore, that the estimates which the Honourable Minister and his team bring to the House today will reflect in a fairly clear and specific, definitive ways the Ministry's plan for addressing those challenges and those tensions which are brought before the state today in terms of its capacity to provide for its citizens. In this case, we're talking about environmental considerations and sanitation services issues. So I imagine that the estimates, in a very clear and definitive way, will point out to us that the minister and his team understand, and the government beyond that understand clearly what is required of them in the current environmental situation in Barbados, the current sanitation services related situation in Barbados, what is demanded of them, and we will see some clear indicators in these estimates as to a fairly thought through and outlined response. That is one question. And the second has to do with this garbage sewage tax. I live in St. Michael East, and I hear it said by many in St. Michael East that this garbage tax is particularly burdensome. In fact, they treat it as water rate increase, and that's how it is expressed. Water rate's gone up. So it's particularly burdensome. It may seem to some that it is just a minimal increase, and the position may be put that our rates relative to water provision in Barbados perhaps are among the lowest when compared to others in the region. I have always said when that argument is put, the equally forceful argument must be put that our energy prices are among the highest, and therefore it offsets any concession that we may have in terms of provision or supply of water. But the fact of the matter, Madam Chair and Honourable Minister, is that people find this particularly burdensome. It is not a standalone situation, but it is applied in a context where there are other user fees and charges, increased taxes, inflation, the cost of living, virtual stagnation in wages. There's a context. And I would like to hear my honourable friend from St. Michael East give us his view on that this garbage tax is too burdensome for many. And I would further want to ask if he would be prepared to advise his cabinet colleagues to that effect. And my third question, Madam Chair, has to do with the recent acquisition of garbage trucks. And I poked a little fun at my honourable friend when he was pictured in the public media in Barbados at midnight celebrating the arrival of 2 small garbage trucks. And if I poke fun at my honourable friend then, I must compliment him now that there are some very large, nice-looking vehicles And that, if I'm to be fully honest, I hear people on the streets talking today, speaking to the effect that the garbage collection service in the area is much improved. And so I give him plaudits for that. I like to treat the honesty. And having said that, though, I have to ask further my honorable friend as to the financial arrangements around those garbage trucks. Because it is not only out there being said in some circles that the collection service has improved, it has also come to my ears more than once that there's some issues around the acquisition of those garbage trucks, perhaps relative to the financial arrangements. I've even heard it said that my honorable friend, being the minister responsible, did not even know that the trucks were going to be ordered. And I know he treats the honesty as well. And so I would like to hear he and his team speak to the matter of the financial arrangements around the ordering and acquisition of these garbage trucks, and whether or not there are other orders for garbage trucks with which he may now be familiar that are also in play. Sorry to have taken that long, ma'am.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. Unfortunately, you're the embodiment of many as Leader of the Opposition. But nevertheless, I have to respond to you. I think that the one that is most critical, the one that which is grounded in rumor, is the one that I would respond to. In the very early stages of the importing of the Christmas gift, which we gave to the state, with 10 trucks, not the first two, because that was a signal of my commitment and not waiting on anybody to give me second-hand information. And I was hoping that I can even expedite the delivery of the trucks coming from the ship. So I got up out of my bed after midnight and went into the harbor. I didn't want to hear that a vehicle was in. And when I go and make a statement the following morning, there are a number of distortionists and antagonists who would deliberately go and twist everything that I say. You know, you remember, Madam Chair, that I once told them I was not Jesus and everybody was offended. I am trying to find out if I had mentioned them that I believe I am Jesus, what they would have said. But I was just trying to imply clearly that they were asking me to do a task that only superhuman can contribute to it. And that was all it was, and it became a story of great significance for the quality journalism which we have. Anyhow, we got those trucks out. Those were the first two. We are now in a position to say that we have about 23 vehicles. Yeah, no, I mean new trucks. Yeah. We have about 23 new trucks. And we have about 10 to 12, because it fluctuates, trucks that we have had before. So we are very close to 35 trucks functioning at the sanitation services. Last year, while we were here, we were in possession of 10. I know that the former and the rejected Prime Minister of the last group, and deservingly so, had a lot to say about the bringing in of trucks, and said that I journeyed through my Lawrence Hill and Lickridge Village and the Ivy, and I punched my hand in the air and say, hooray. The reality, Madam Chair, is that the manner in which the sanitation service was run prior to this government coming to office, the situations up there was deplorable. Contracts were given with inflated prices. We have subsequently renegotiated those contracts. And to be honest with you, whenever I see anything like that, I try to remove the facade so that I can see what is behind it. And if a government can pay $2 million a month to an enterprise for service, but the enterprise can come back and renegotiate it with this government, who function on different principles altogether, and we can see a reduction of 50% of the total amount, then I have reason, if I am lucid man, I have reason to be suspicious. We found, in fact, the minister before took pictures after washing off trucks and stood alone in front of them and tried to impress upon the general public that he had imported trucks into Barbados, and he never, ever import a toy truck. There are all kinds of things going on up there. The mess is as such as that we are still trying to unearth, not infelicities, things that have got the potential to emerge as felonies. So I am hoping that sooner or later some comfort will be given to those persons and that specific person at Dodds in St. Philip. We came there and we found the department owing $27,497,130.63 to the National Insurance Department. And if you think that is bad, the PAYE, $24,497,130.63 to the National Insurance Department. You think that is bad? PAYE, $10,679,075.34. That's not all. $34 million to SBRC and other supplies, other small businesses and so on. $3,423,403.82. Now, we had no money in the consolidated fund. This was a question now of urgency. This is almost tantamount to what Malthus talked about. Crisis. Sometimes when a government does not function the right way, it could end up with many people becoming deceased entities because of all the issues that are likely to break out as a consequence of not being able to move the waste off the ground. We were in a crisis. We could not escape it. The general public was shouting for murder. Sooner or later, a new government would not be able to say, I am sorry, we apologize, we don't have the money, it is not our fault, so we had to do something. So we had to take into consideration the opportunity cost, asking the general public to bear with us in the circumstances while we bring the levy into place, because we could not pull it from the consolidated fund. And we then had to use that money to save two major units within the governance of Barbados, which is the Water Authority and the SSA. You can imagine, and I don't have to tell you, if you check the clippings from the newspapers, because you don't have any record of what comes through the television or the radio, but if you check the clippings from the newspapers, at that specific point, we had to make a decision. There was no time at that point for us to be filibustering about what we should do or what we should not do. A decision had to be made. And as a consequence, the government had to put the levy in place to address those circumstances. Leader of the Opposition, again, you asked the question.
So, ma'am, with your leave, just for clarity, I understand the minister to be saying that the government faced with the tensions between the demand for the service and the incapacity on their part because of lack of funds had to impose the levy.
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. And if we could get back some of the money from those who took it, we would be in a better position to avoid.
That's another matter. I wondered, the question really was, would he be prepared to acknowledge it is burdensome and to say to the chamber, I am willing at this stage now we have gotten to this place to advise the removal of that particular levy.
No, if you were in a position where you had no food, and then for a short period you discover that you can eat at least one meal, you also know that we love breakfast, we love dinner, supper, and everything between that. I think that we're now at the stage of, we're now getting breakfast. We were on our deathbed, wallowing in starvation. And we are now getting close to a reasonable balance.
But you know your party's philosophy is that if you're sending a fellow on a long journey, all you need to do is give him breakfast. Lunch doesn't matter. Dinner doesn't matter.
I think you were making a mistake, probably because you're seeing my face. Probably because you're seeing my face, and you know at one time I was in another place with another group, and I remember them talking about bus fare and lunch money. But this is not the same body of governance that you're talking about. We are not part of the ridiculous. We understand the importance, and that is why I have great respect for this ministry. I have worked with the staff in this ministry, Ms. Jones. I'm going to let her speak to this too. Ms. Jones and my other officers. I don't know if the Messiah has endowed me with a great gift. These men and women are people of great compassion, and they don't stop entering the element of compassion in the discussions with me. Although they're scientists in their own right and administrators, all of that is undergirded by passion to make sure to protect the lives of human beings.
And Honorable Minister, Madam Chair, I am trying to assist the minister in reinforcing the view that this ministry is important, its work is important. That's why I said it in the same philosophical frame that the Honorable Minister did, because he seemed from his opening comments to be laboring under the perception that there's some among him, perhaps among his colleagues, who do not appreciate the importance of the ministry which he leads. So I'm trying to help him to establish that.
Well, you can't win a government with the percentage in which you should know equally as well as me, with the percentage of people that really support it, without having some of those elements being part of the entire governance. And this governance do not exclude people and other agencies that are not even part of the government body itself. So from time to time, you have people who try to push back. And there are people who, if you put on a cent as the aggregate figure for taxation, will tell you that it is burdensome. But I believe that as long as you can justify why you had to do it, we live in a society at one time where there was no tax, there was no wages, no salaries. And this government has a history, and you know that, a humane history, that we are very concerned protecting the vulnerable over a number of years, and I don't think there's any, I know that there's no effort. Certainly I would not be part of a government who don't consider as primary the concerns of the most vulnerable in society. This is the Ministry of the Environment, and I put the interests of the most vulnerable on the front line. I don't talk about environment as though it's an abstraction from an abstraction within reality. I talk about the environment because I know who are the people who are likely to be most affected by what we do or what we do not do within the Ministry of the Environment itself. And it is on that basis that I can actually explain to you. But I think the one that I want to talk to you about is in December. It's just a coincidence, and probably a real timely one, and it also occurred with the celebration of the birth of our Lord Jesus Christ, the arrival of the trucks, and since nobody, and you know better than me, I'm not a man too biblical about things, but you know they say that the Lord moves in a mysterious way, his wonders to perform. For Christmas, they could wonders to perform. Imagine that this people having reason to be concerned. Some people try to still place it deep in controversy, although all these signals were very clear. This is something divine that has occurred. And when I went to the harbor, I told the people, this is your Christmas gift. 10 trucks. But then the debate started, and well facilitated by other agencies that are willing to distort reality, that the trucks did not have any bar on the back, as though Barbadians don't have any innovation or no skills, that you can't put on a bar between 12 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday morning at 6, right? A task as easy as that. Bars were placed on the trucks. They were recording about 6 or so boats at the side of the trucks and saying that if the people travel on the side of the trucks, they're likely to get killed and all of that. And we moved those and we put them to the back. Then they said they were too big to drive on the roads in Barbados, and there are many other trucks much bigger than those. Then they believed that there was no creative talent in the management, and the management was able to use those vehicles all over Barbados, making a modification to the model which they apply. And now they are saying they are not only aesthetically pleasing to the eye, right, but they are of important utility value to the Barbadian population, and we have been able to reduce the amount of waste on the road substantially as a result of that Christmas gift which we received at that time. Now, the ordering of those trucks. The engineers, the superintendents, all of these people looked at the specimens, the specifications in relation to the model trucks that was coming in. They went through it in detail. They gave a comprehensive account of the value of the trucks at this specific time. At that specific time, the matter was then taken before the board of the SSA, and the board of the SSA then approved it, and from there it passed through me, and the trucks were on their way, certainly within a shorter period of time than usual. And that was because there was direct negotiations, because we understand the urgency of the matter, and we had to respond as quickly as we can. So there's nothing that I personally know that is injurious about any managerial conduct, or even at the level of any ministerial conduct. I certainly don't know anything about it, and my mouth fairly big, and I don't think the leader of opposition has anything to worry about. I think that what should be most important is that we are resolving the problem of removal of waste from off the streets, and we have been able to avert a major health crisis in Barbados.
Ma'am, just for clarity, I thank the Minister for his response, and particularly last question here. I was hoping to get some information on the financial arrangements around the acquisition of the trucks. I'm not worried about anybody's conduct in the public sector around this issue. I was just simply asking for some detail on the financial arrangements around the acquisition of the trucks. The costs, the agents, et cetera, et cetera.
The General Manager will respond to you.
Good morning, I'm Janice Jones, Manager Sanitation Service Authority. With respect to the acquisition of the trucks, the Sanitation Service Authority the value of the trucks was $2,300,000 for the 10 trucks. The Sanitation Service Authority would have paid an initial deposit of $1 million, and the balance was paid by the Ministry of Finance. We would have written up to our parent ministry advising that we only had money for the deposit, and that was paid, and the request was made from the Ministry of Finance to foot the balance for the acquisition of the trucks, and that was done.
Was there an agent involved, may I ask, Madam Chair? And is there any outstanding debt, or it has been fully paid? I'm not clear.
It has been fully paid, sir.
He asked if there was an agent.
A company by the FSBT Limited brought in the vehicles, and the monies were paid to them.
Who's FSBT Limited, Madam Chair? May I have a word?
Could you define the SSBT? For the honorable leader, the opposition?
No,
It's a Barbadian company?
a registered Barbadian company.
That's as much as we can get.
Yes. What more do you need? You're covered? Okay. Honorable member for St. George South.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And a blessed good morning to my very, very good friend and colleague, Minister Prescott, and his team that comprise the Environment, NCC, and the other agencies, Ministry of the Environment. Madam Chair, I sat and I listened to the question posed by the member for St. Michael West. And I don't intend for my words this morning that I will echo in this chamber to be contentious in any way. But I will begin by congratulating the minister and his team for the sterling work that they have done to clean up this country. Not only clean up this country in terms of garbage, in terms of debris, but in terms of corruption. And I listened to the member for St. Michael West, who in his right can question anything. But the member for St. Michael East, in his response with respect to trucks and going to the harbor to see trucks and how much money was spent on trucks. I can't answer for the member for St. Michael West, for St. Michael East, but I could answer on behalf of this government to say that no matter how much money we spent, and we did not overspend, can't compare with the building that is up in St. Thomas at Vaucluse sitting idle. And I bring a message from the people of St. George South to the minister, who spends a lot of time with me in St. George South, because the people are very happy. Because garbage, the issues that we faced in 2018 when we came to office, are no longer. And I want to thank the Sanitation Service Authority, from the chairman, the general manager, the officers, some who live in St. George South and who looked after St. George South, they shall remain nameless. But the people are very happy, and I can speak for the entire Barbados. We came from a time, Madam Chair, when we could not get garbage collected in this country before a 6-week period or even 2 months, to now seeing garbage trucks daily and every other day. And I think this chamber should congratulate the member and his team for the sterling work that they have done in such a short space of time. And I'm not going to ask the member how much money he spent on garbage truck, because I know that is minuscule to the amount of money that was spent between the period 2008 and 2018 on a number of other things, including corruption. So I enter this debate to bring some clarity and also to ask the member a simple question, and one I know that will please the people of St. George and the other members, the constituents across the country. Because you have employed 12 members from St. George South. You have helped me. Because we have come from an era where employment, we're talking about employment, unemployment. I want to thank you, Minister. Those 12 young men and women who are cleaning St. George are very happy. Their parents called me and said, Minister, I thank you. I said, don't thank me. You need to thank Minister Prescott. He provided that opportunity. And in saying that, Madam Chair, I would like to ask the Minister how long this campaign will continue. Because I would love to clean up at least 25 more places in St. George that I have. So I pose that simple question to you, but very important question. Because you made a statement in your preamble that you've ridded this country of the possibility and the dangers of infectious diseases as a result of the cleaning that we are doing. So I pose that simple question to you.
Madam Chair, the program that was introduced at NCC, again, was a necessity. Normally, Barbadians on the eve of Christmas, there's a strong passion to be able to enjoy all the niceties that all of us enjoy. And again, it was not an exercise in intellectualism. It was trying to rescue a few people from living in hardship, especially at a joyous moment, an annual joyous moment that all of us love to share, especially all of us decent Christian-minded people in the society. As you know, people never stop coming for work at the NCC. I believe that not only NCC, the SSA, and everybody that goes to the NCC and go to the SSA, they always say, the minister sent me here. People that I don't even know, people that only in Barbados on vacation, sometimes they go and say, the minister sent me here. And they even go somewhere and say, I got to get this job. Or the minister is the boy who sent me. So they're not asking Mr. Jones for an opportunity, or they're not asking Mr. Alves for the opportunity. They go and they demand the opportunity. What I did is I agreed to reach a target without any special allocations to any constituency, without any special allocations to any constituency. I said I would love to see employment spread across the entire landmass. I don't work at NCC. I don't play an actual role in the administration, hands-on role in the administration at NCC. The workers, when the news went out, the workers rushed to the NCC in abundance. They were at the NCC, and from the reports I received, they were at the NCC. The Friday, Facebook did its job. And the general public was notified. They went this Saturday, they went this Sunday. Even when people were at church, they were still coming. And I told them that the Prime Minister had only made available to me X amount of dollars. And many of the ministers here got angry with me. There was even news out there that I had employed 50 people from my constituency out of the total number. I came under the hammer at a special meeting in relation to these jobs. And then there were many narratives on how the jobs were given out. And I did not even select anybody from my community. I told them, go to my personal assistant and speak to her, register at the NCC, and I believe that you stand a chance. There are some MPs that would have responded favorably, and some MPs probably got more than some. But based on the amount, the maximum amount of jobs that I was supposed to give out, some people who believe that equity should prevail divided the number and said that it was unfair if the people at NCC should give 50 jobs to Prescott and 2 jobs to somebody else and all of that. And it was on the basis of a principle that I heard being advanced around, not in any formal conversation, but in informal conversations, that lots of people understood that they could not abuse the system, and I personally did not going to do it. I didn't try in any way to influence the outcome, but I trusted the judgment of the staff at the NCC for the selection of the workers on that occasion, and we employed over 300 people in the circumstances. Initially, the program was to run for 6 weeks because the Prime Minister told me we were operating on the financial constraints, and whenever she's in a position to be a little elastic in terms of re-employing persons into the system, she is prepared to do so. I could not spend more than what was given. And it's on the basis of those limitations that the policy was introduced to the NCC. Subsequently, when the money was exhausted, I made a mercy plea to the Prime Minister. I said, even if we have to sacrifice things that other people enjoy, so that we will have money available to us to help these poor people, I will love. And the Prime Minister then discussed the matter with me. When I put the model before her, she did not dictate it. I asked her, well, if we don't have money, is it possible that I can have a week on, week off model to apply? And within 1 week after they came off, they went on, week off. I did not influence or dictate it in any way to the NCC who should be employed and who should not be employed. I have members of my family, and I don't support nepotism. I have members of my family who today believe that since you're my cousin and the whole world getting work, then I should be getting work, to the extent that has created some tensions within the family relationships. So there's not a modicum of undermining, not a modicum of being unfair, unjust in any way. I did what I felt was right from the position that I was in, and then I left everything else to the honesty and the capability of the officers within the NCC. What I can tell you is those workers are on week on, week off. The money which was allocated and it is clearly mirrored within the supplementary which I have had. We'll take them down to the end of March, but I'm having some good words from the Prime Minister. She tells me as long as when she looks back at the figures, she will make sure that we continue the process in the post-2020, the 2019-2020 period. So we will go into the new year, hopefully based on that understanding that the people will continue to work for the remainder of the year.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, I can't call you Jesus. You didn't turn water into wine, but you have done a miraculous job, close to a miracle in this country thus far. Keep the good work up in that area of beautifying and cleaning Barbados. My next question to you, though, Minister, and your team, the whole aspect of derelict vehicles on the park for months and for years, and I spoke to you about one of them recently in that corner, you know, that border. I think is the member for St. Michael's Southeast and yourself and I at the corner of that valley. I'm just using that as an example because I know other members would have similar situations that I'm speaking of, even the member for St. Michael West. But I would need to know government's policy as it relates to derelict vehicles and what are you doing about it in terms of a policy position. We can move one or two, but I want to hear government's policy, what we intend to do about derelict vehicles, because that has a serious environmental and health hazard to this country.
Thank you, Minister. I would allow the Director of the Environmental Protection Department to respond.
Thank you very much, Minister. My name is Anthony Headley. I'm the Acting Director of the Environmental Protection Department. We have been responsible for some time for both the derelict vehicles and derelict buildings program. The overall policy of the program is to remove all derelict vehicles when they're identified. The main issue is the challenge of resources at any given point in time. We have a rolling program where we continually identify derelict vehicles throughout the length and breadth of the island. Currently, we are now completing our final contract for this financial year, but at present, we have identified 736 derelict vehicles. We've removed to date 659 derelict vehicles. 11 contractors have received work, and we have spent approximately $94,425,000 on the derelict vehicles program. Those vehicles, we have, as part of the program, a verification process to ensure that when a contract is issued, that the vehicles are actually removed. They're taken first to SBRC, and then the SSA directs where the vehicles go from there. But that is part of the verification process where we can be certain, one, that the vehicles that we have identified have been removed to a sanctioned facility. And it is our understanding that they're directed to one of the metal recyclers, and those vehicles are compacted and the materials are shipped off the island for recycling.
Mr. Headley, thank you for the simple explanation. The time has come that we as a people, this government is about changing behaviors and in a positive way. And I think the time has come for us to look at our legislation, if it has not been done. And I know the good Attorney General, I think I heard him speaking about this before, whereby, similar to how we are dealing with persons who have left the land for years to run in bush and rodents and rats, and the dangers and the harm to children and human beings generally, I think the time has come for us. When someone leaves a vehicle on a pasture or on a wayside or on the road that is dangerous to traffic and is dangerous to your health, once we have identified those individuals, then I think there should be some sort of payment or some sort of warning towards a payment to the owners. And not just that we, as a government, going to spend our resources and our money on cleaning up vehicles and then, because everything you mentioned there, Mr. Headley, is a cost. How are we going to recoup this money from the owners? So I think the time has come, and you can speak to it, or the minister, where we have to begin to change behaviors. Those persons who see the government rule, oh, I done with this car, let me park it by the wayside, and Mr. Headley going to pick it up. The time has come for us to change behaviors and implement some measures within our legislation that can help us change the way people view the government and view what we're doing as just to facilitate whether you do it good or you do it badly. That's my 2 piece in that.
Minister, well, I agree that because of the situation that we have found ourselves in, a lot of the services that we used to offer to the general public, these services are now underneath pressure because of financial limitations. But I think that we must always be cognizant of the point that was made by the leader of the opposition, that there is only so much people can bear. And my view is that the people are also experiencing forms of depression coming out of the state. In other words, people are surviving, and we are here at this time helping them to survive, and hopefully and gradually with these, we'll be able to allow these people to enjoy a much higher quality of life than they've been enjoying prior to this government coming to office. Neither do I agree that in every instant where the government cannot finance a service that is a reflection of humanitarianism, that government should place the financial burden, because sooner or later the people's backs will be against the wall and the people will respond. And I'm a practical man, where people sometimes tend to forget that we still have to go back to the judge and the jury every 5 years. And if you do things for the purpose of massaging your own ego, then the time will come when you will have to do a lot of begging and pleading and hoping that people would grant you mercy and give you an opportunity to serve again. And I am always one who caution my government with all the good intentions to try not to drive us to that point where when we go back to the people, we are forced to go on our knees and beg. We can always explain, and I think any reasonable people would understand. I believe that the level of literacy in Barbados is at a level that people will reason. They understand that in 2 years' time, and right, as the minister rightfully said, nobody can perform miracles. And as much as we would love to do many things, I mean, take for example, we had to get people, we had to make sure that we allow people with that intellectual capacity and ambition, even when some of them don't have the capacity, and they had the ambition, we make sure that we find a way of facilitating them in the area of tertiary education. That was something that sent this society in a sense of hopelessness prior to this government coming to office. So we always have to be cognizant of those challenges that we're facing, and I don't think that we can always solve all of them by imposing more and more taxes or levies or duties or whatever title you apply to it. the deductions on people's disposable incomes. People need to be able to spend and eat and live good as everybody, any other person.
Thank you. Honorable Member for Christchurch South.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good morning to Minister and your team. I wanted to make an intervention on the issue of waste disposal and to indicate that when we were children, we practiced a form of recycling. And Minister, I feel very comfortable saying this to you since I believe you and I belong to the same generation, believe it or not.
And the same class.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. We'll come to that in the next question. And look, our bicycle tires used to become a part of the seed gun. And our milk tins used to become a part of the roller. So in our own way, many years ago, I wouldn't say how many, we were practicing recycling. But I want to say to you what you know, that a heavy initiative that needs to be taken by Barbadians on the question of waste disposal, a heavy initiative needs to be taken on the issue of recycling. I sometimes dispose of waste at home, and I feel guilty. The plastic bottles that contain juices, I throw those in the garbage, and I feel guilty. I say to myself, but this really is not garbage. It should be recycled. And I'm happy to report that I represent a constituency which is leading Barbados on the issue of recycling as an essential component within the larger scheme of waste disposal. That we dispose, perhaps, I don't know the figures, but 50% of what we dispose ought to be recycled. And that will go a long way towards solving the problem of waste disposal in Barbados. We need to invest heavily in recycling. And I could not let this moment pass unless I paid public tribute. I come here, I'm parochial. Unless I paid public tribute to the Atlantic Shores Network that does recycling on 2 Saturdays, I think, in every month. And they extend that across Christchurch, and I believe they extend it beyond Christchurch. They invite people to come from all parts of Christchurch and all parts of Barbados to be a part of their recycling program, which assists greatly on the issue of waste disposal. It is also done in Graham Hall. The residents of Graham Hall have a recycling program going there, and that assists your ministry and your department, your Sanitation Service Authority, greatly in terms of waste disposal. There's a small community called Ashbyland in Oistins. They clean their community by their own effort at least once a year, and they assist your department as well. And this is something that needs to be duplicated across Barbados, Minister, so that this issue of waste disposal, which has become one of the hottest issues in Barbados, need not be so. If Barbadians practice the good habit of recycling, and I want to encourage your ministry, I want to encourage your relevant department to get into the schools and to teach these attitudes to children at the age of 5 and upwards, so that waste disposal in Barbados ought no longer to be an issue. The number of trucks ought no longer to be an issue if we have our people practicing recycling. Again, let not this moment pass unless I name a few of the persons who are spearheading the recycling effort in my constituency. That's Mr. Barney Gibbs and Mrs. Shari Lobo. There are others, but those are the 2 main drivers behind the initiative to add recycling to the whole exercise of waste disposal. And my question to your ministry and to your Sanitation Service Authority is this: how far advanced is the initiative to make recycling a part of the entire effort of waste disposal in Barbados? I thank you.
Yeah, very important question, and really it's addition to the progressive direction that the ministry is going in. Let Mr. Ricardo Marshall respond to you in this regard.
Good morning all. Ricardo Marshall, the head of the Project Management Coordination Unit in the Ministry of Environment and National Beautification. Thank you for your question, sir. We have been working for a very long time on the Integrated Solid Waste Management Program in Barbados. And I'm pleased to say that under the efforts of that program, we've been able to move our diversion rate of waste from the landfill to 70%, one of the highest in anywhere in the Americas that you will find. What we have sought to do is to see waste as a resource and to work with a number of private and public sector partners to bring it to the level where we are right now. There are a number of existing waste brokers, and I say waste brokers rather than recyclers because there are waste brokers. We produce very little product from that is utilized here. But what we seek to do is to process that material in some way, usually to reduce the awkwardness of the size so that we can increase the volume that is exported overseas, and that is then recycled into fresh product. We also have recycling that goes on here, for example, through SBRC and the production of mulches and additional soil amendments and that sort of thing. So we have a number of private sector entities that work with us, and key in allowing that system to work is the existence of the Returnable Containers Act, which puts a refund deposit on items, and we have just sought and received approval for an amendment to the Returnable Containers Act so that it no longer just covers beverages, but recycled containers. So you're dealing with all plastics, glass, metals, and we're right now discussing with the key entities out there who are involved how exactly the revision and the amendment is going to be executed. A number of persons were mentioned by the Member of Parliament who spoke with respect to activities in the communities. There are a number of other communities across the island that are doing similarly, some of whom we have worked directly in partnership with. We also have programs across the government service with various government entities who are doing that level of diversion in their programs. I must caution, however, that one of the issues that we're facing is markets for these products internationally. The world that we are living in that respect is changing dramatically, and we're seeing a lot of Asian companies that normally would have taken materials into those Asian countries no longer doing so or limiting the amount of material that they're taking. So we are right now looking at ways in which we can effectively utilize those materials, both in terms of local recycling programs, in terms of reuse, in terms of guaranteeing markets that we can find so that we can put a curbside recycling program in place that makes sense, but also to look at how we can recover energy from that waste in an effective way. And we've been in discussions with other agencies, including the Ministry of Energy and Water Resources, on that matter, looking at a way in which we can do waste to energy, that Barbados is not a guinea pig for others, but that we are utilizing technology that is sound and accepted internationally.
Thank you very much. Minister, before I arrived here, I was listening to your introduction, and as is usual, you invoke the names of several philosophers. And I want to congratulate you for your consistent defense of the dispossessed and the underclasses in Barbados. Whatever philosophical position we take on that, and they're varied, yours has been a consistent voice, a most consistent voice in defense of those whom you represent in this chamber and elsewhere with great fervor. I cannot replicate the passion of the Honorable Member for St. George South, but I want to join him in thanking you, expressing deepest gratitude for the relief that you have brought to the lives of persons on the cusp of Christmas who would have gone into that festivity with nothing in their pockets and perhaps even less in their fridges. And you saw it fit to give them employment, and to give employment that would enhance the appearance of Barbados. So you were doing two things. You were enhancing the appearance of Barbados, but more importantly, you were giving relief to citizens across this Barbados. And again, I join with my parliamentary colleague from St. George South and to say to you that you made a difference to 12 souls, and that I cannot find words to express the gratitude to you, but if you wish me to find words in keeping with the philosophies that you normally espouse, I wanted to say a few weeks ago before we left the other building that it reminded me of the economics of John Maynard Keynes. As you know, Minister, he at one point would have said that if you have to excavate holes in the ground, pay people to excavate them and just refill them, do that as an economic strategy to boost the economy and to pull an economy out of recession. And as you know, John Maynard Keynes influenced the economics of post-war America. And what you are doing is reminiscent of that in an economy that claims, the economists will tell you that we have been in recession for some time, that we are not yet out of that recession, and you may not be aware of the significance, you may not be aware of the significance of the policy that you pursue, and I want to encourage the government to broaden that enterprise, that initiative, in creating employment where the private sector finds itself either unable or unwilling to create employment in this country. The state must do it. And I suspect, Minister, that is your philosophical position, that the state must expend its resources to pull people out of poverty in this country. And I want to join with the Honorable Member for St. George South in congratulating you. I want to commend, if it is Keynesian economics, I want to congratulate you and commend a broadening or an expansion of that Keynesian economics that will make a difference in the lives of certain individuals in this country, and indeed that will make a difference in the life of this country. And I cannot press you with the question. I will ask it. You've employed a dozen from each constituency. Indeed, I will not make it a question. I want to humbly suggest to you, Minister, that if this economy is to experience some growth, that dozen may have to become 2 dozen. That 2 dozen may have to become 3 dozen. We saw what happened this week. Whatever has been the story behind that, it is a fact that it happened. There are 149 people in this country less well off today than they were on Monday. if the private sector finds itself unable or unwilling to rescue and retrieve those people from the depths of disastrous impoverishment, this caring government must introduce and reintroduce a form of Keynesian economics that will rescue people, that will literally put bread on their table. And Minister, I commend you, and I want to encourage you. It is not a question. You may comment if you wish, but I wish to encourage you to encourage your government to pursue that economic philosophy, that economic policy, to bring this country out of a recession, the grips of which we will never be comfortable. We cannot be comfortable with the poor among us suffering as badly as they have been suffering. I'm obliged to you, Minister.
Madam Chair, thank you very much for allowing us to venture into what I call it philosophical guidelines. Madam Chair, the reality is that there is a principle, a higher principle than any partisan phobia. The reality is, and Kwame Nkrumah said, and also Nyeri indicated that one of the difficulties he had when he was an administrator is that there were great ideas, but the ideas were not always executed by him. And what he felt ought to be the end result, based on the objectives that he had in his mental construct, he said the people who were responsible for executing those ideas never fully understood what it is that he wanted to achieve. My view is that I am not governed by, I have had a checkered past in relation to political life. I have touched probably 3 or so of the central political institutions across Barbados and played a central and played some role in those institutions. In many cases, when it was embraced initially, there were always a number of bourgeois, petty bourgeois persons in the institution will always try to relegate your contribution to the institution itself. I part ways with all of them on all occasions because of that kind of attitude towards working class people. Some of them contributed nothing. They were basically parasites on the earth. And I had to separate myself from them. I am strong and unequivocal about my strong egalitarian faith and my strong commitment to Ubuntu principles. And I always do anything that I do. If I move from outside the framework of those principles, I would apologize to anybody if I make that mistake, and I'm not going to make it. So I would always try. I can't tell you that I'm always on track, but I would always try to make sure I look after the people from whom I sprung. Madam Chair, it is important, even as we analyze climate issues, the impact of climate issues, the principle that undergird the existence of the said countries itself is because those countries are the most vulnerable. They are the most vulnerable countries. I understand that, and that is why when the memory officers speak to me, without telling them, I understand you well, I will hope that when they see my expression and see my friend list, they understand that I am on board with them in how we address issues related to small island development states in relation to the most fragile countries, especially Barbados. Flat, experiences lots of challenges from climate change. If the weather becomes more severe, Barbados is one of the first countries that will go under in the Eastern Caribbean. and people live every day, don't have these fears, don't even have that level of consciousness that they live on a flat topography. The sea levels are rising. They don't even look at the signs around the beaches that tell you in case you hear a whistle or anything, so there's likely to be a tsunami, and therefore they should look for shelter, look for higher ground. They don't look at anything, so they just live. I am not part of that, but I believe that the Master has blessed me with all the challenges that I've had to at least being in this place, and that's why I said to you very early, thank you very much, thank the people of Barbados, thank the government of the Barbados Labour Party for giving me this opportunity to serve, and I hope that they will allow me to serve as long as the people sees it fit. But even if I'm not in these halls, I will certainly be the representative of the people in or out of Parliament.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. James.
Just one
more?
We have
Go
three,
ahead.
do we?
Yeah, but I thought it sounded like a wrap up. So
No,
carry
I
on.
normally say thank you as a
Go
matter of
ahead.
courtesy to each question. That's not the wrap up. Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister. My final intervention is to depart from the philosophical and to become parochial once again. And in passing, let me say that we want to thank you again, not only for providing that employment, but for outfitting those humble workers as you have done. It shows a level of conscientiousness and compassion that you've actually put them in uniforms so that the traffic is not a hazard to them. Now, as I said, I will become parochial, and the work that they're doing, they are removing the unwanted green of shrubbery around Barbados. In my constituency, Christchurch South, we want them to enhance the wanted green, the green spaces, and the spaces of recreation, the veritable oases around Christchurch South. I discover that your officers are here from the National Conservation Commission, so I feel that I may put this to you and to your officers, and to identify the green areas of Christchurch South that require some attention, and that is to say consistent attention. And the member for St. George South was asking how long shall this employment be for. I hope that it will continue for a long time. It is not to be seen merely as a relief program, but a program to keep Barbados beautiful and to keep Barbados comfortable for all of us. Those green areas that I think of immediately in Christchurch South, or those areas of recreation for the public, there is a lawn opposite the Massey Supermarket in Oistins, one of the most beautiful green areas in Barbados. And your National Conservation Commission, I think, has been responsible for the upkeep of that area, and we say thanks and we congratulate them for the attention that they're paying to it. We've recently had a program there with the children where we installed the banners advertising the Oistins Festival. That green area, we want to propose to the government that it be a barricade be placed around it, not a solid barricade, not something that separates it from the rest, from the passage of traffic. Even if you do a chain, something that will protect the children who visit that area and the older persons, and a few benches. I know I spoke to the general manager of Massey last year when I had the pleasure of being present at the reopening with the honorable member for St. George South, and he was suggesting that he is willing to donate benches to place on that green area. And I would like to propose that. The young men in Oistins who love football and play football, they play on that area. Haven't seen them recently, but for want of a recreational space, we would like the National Conservation Commission to look at that space and to do something in that space for the good of the local Oistins community, and indeed for all those persons who visit Oistins. The Dover kiosk, I'm going to try to move quickly within my time constraints, Madam Chair. The Dover kiosk, again, your manager has been paying most compassionate attention to that area. I have no complaints there. It always needs to be clean, but there are people there who are cleaning it now. And of course, everyone expects me when I speak to come to the Bay Garden, the jewel in the crown of Christchurch South, Oistins. And I know we've had discussions. I'm not going to ask the general manager, the CEO, to make any public disclosure, but he and I know what we are about. We know what we have discussed consistently. Minister, I'm saying this to you, Minister. I want to commend to your ministry and to the work you're doing, the excellent and hands-on contribution of the leadership of the National Conservation to the work that it is mandated to do in this country, and he and I have spoken tirelessly on the issue of the Bay Garden. I can boast to you now that tonight I go there to welcome a group from England, a group of about 30 persons from England. They're of Caribbean heritage. I would like to persuade the Minister of Tourism, who is now present, to join me there tonight at 7 o'clock. And I suspect that if I disclose the ages of those people to him, that will persuade him to come. Yes. But we are going to welcome them to Barbados tonight in the Bay Garden. And I say that.
On a point of order, ma'am.
Not.
On a point of order, ma'am. It is with the greatest reluctance that I interrupt my friend while he is in full flight. But I want to make it abundantly clear for the record of this honorable parliament that at no time during the course of my tenure as Minister of Tourism that I have ever conducted national duty on the basis of an interaction with a person or persons of any specific age group. Unless it be needed to be made any more clear, or gender.
You know, there are very clever ways to get a minister's attention.
Madam Chair.
Before you carry on, Minister, I want to add to what the honourable member is saying. I had requested or tried to pique your interest in the pond at Bayfield. There's a natural pond at Bayfield. Migratory birds come, lily pads that the residents have done a fantastic job in maintaining. They also would like to have some park benches, but there are a lot of tourists tend to pass through, and I just want you to consider that.
Madam Chair, I've asked the PS, and I'm sure that she will share the information with the Acting General Manager, Mr. Ryan Alves. I just want to assure the Minister, Gary, Mr. Thorne, I can't remember the titles of the constituency. Christchurch South. Give him the assurance that Mr. Alves has the freedom of autonomy to engage in discussions with him, but and certainly as long as those discussions don't have any clandestine elements attached to it, and I know that he's an honourable man and he would not get into anything like that. But Mr. Alves is but I still would like to believe that they will share that information with me, because I just made the point that both Julius Nyeri and Kwame Nkrumah indicated that sometimes you're a minister responsible for a department, but then you have ideas, you have a policy, but then the administrators sometimes have their own interpretation. So I will hope that Mr. Alves will share that information.
At 7 o'clock at the Bay Garden, right?
Yes, indeed. Mr. Alves is invited as well.
Mr. Alves will respond.
Hi, good morning. I'm Ryan Alves, General Manager, Acting National Conservation Commission. To the first comment, reference to the Oistins Bay Garden area, or the area further to the west of Oistins Bay Gardens. Yes, the National Conservation Commission maintains that area. We have recognized also that persons have migrated from the Oistins area all the way to the west to utilize that space. We have in our Christchurch plan to add some benches to the area, add also a barrier which would be based on vegetation, basically a hedge along with ropes and bollards in a very picturesque way to ensure that it is safe for children to play. So that is on our Christchurch agenda, and that will be done in this next financial year. The Oistins Bay Garden, as we have discussed in detail for several months, that is likely to move forward swiftly. The chairman has given his blessings to what you have identified, and it is in keeping with what we want to do to improve the product of the Oistins Bay Garden area, including the upkeep and renovation of the drainage system. For the Dover area, as you mentioned, we are also looking for partners with Corporate Barbados to make sure that we provide the best product that we can for the public to enjoy. We thank those that have come forward at the Dover Esplanade and the Kiosk area so far, and we look forward to greater partnerships with Corporate Barbados.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. James South.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to the Ministry of the Environment. I want to join my colleagues in congratulating you on dealing with the severe crisis that would have affected all of Barbados. Like other MPs, I too was bombarded with concerns about garbage collection, overgrown bush, and the threat that it created for the residents of St. James South, because it was not only the issue of rats or the potential for disease, it was also about security, where bush and overgrown lots provided haven for persons who wanted to break into houses or who wanted to rob people in the area. And I know that the ministry would have been plagued with the lack of resources, finances, equipment, which made it really, really difficult for you to respond to 30 constituencies crying out for relief, crying out for service. And I want to congratulate the staff for being patient, even though you'll be going through that every day, several times a day, people calling with their angst and putting it out on you, but being patient and very professional in handling all of those requests and doing to the best of your ability to be able to respond as best as you could. I say that because I know that it was raised by the Leader of the Opposition about the concern people have expressed about having to pay the additional $45, which helps to support the Sanitation Services Authority and the Barbados Water Authority. And while in general, I think people understand the constraints, the challenges, that there's generally a financial challenge to the government, the $45 for some people can feel heavy. But I want to be able to put that $45 into context. Had you not been able to get that money to be able to do some of the things that you've been able to do, we would have had a great health crisis. And it is important that we stay on course to ensure that you have sufficient equipment to do what needs to be done to keep this environment extremely clean and healthy. But I also want to balance that against, and this is for the benefit, Madam Chair, of the general public. When this government came into office, one of the first things that we did to create an ease for people was to be able to increase pensions to the elderly. And in relation to the $45 increase, people who are on pensions and people who are in dire need can appeal to a tribunal to get relief from it. In addition to that, we have been able to put back in place the reverse tax credit that affect people up to $25,000, and then we've put in another credit that helps people up to $35,000. And $45 is what, about $540 a year? About that. And the reverse tax credit and the other extended program that reaches the $35,000 mark compensates much more. Sorry? Compensatory? The compensatory income credit. It far exceeds that $540 that they have to pay per year. And then when you add to that the fact that we have been working assiduously, and I want to sincerely thank the Honorable Member for St. Michael West Central, who is the chairman of the NIS. They have been fast-tracking a lot of the payments that have to be made, that have been there for years, that people have been waiting on to be able to deal with their lives. In addition to that, we've been able to do the VAT returns that needed to be done, the income tax returns. So when you weigh on a balance, what were some things that we had to do coming in order to save a crisis situation, and you balance that back with what we've been able to put in place to be able to help safeguard the incomes of Barbadians, on balance, I think that the people are in a more positive position in relation to their income. The other thing that I want to raise about your work, whenever, despite the challenges of equipment, despite the challenges of not having the trucks and the D9s and all the things that you needed to be able to do your job, it created a long, long list. But whenever there was a crisis in a community, and I had that in St. James South, I had a murder in Paradise Heights in a grassy area. And when we called and reached out for help, within days, a D9 was put in the area and it cleaned that entire area for us. And when we had some crimes in Prior Park Heights, a lot of break-ins and so on, in speaking to Mr. Alves, the NCC, spoke to him today, within 2 hours, he had equipment in that area, cleaning that area, because it presented a threat to the residents and it presented a tremendous threat to people who were using it late at night coming home from work. And I want to very sincerely thank you for that, and to thank your department and the ministry for this work. It really has been tremendous. Now, in relation to the debushing, I too am grateful for the work. I am very happy to have heard the minister reassure us that with the new financial year, that we can look for that program to be able to continue. And I'm trusting that with that is more equipment that people can do that debushing work effectively. I want to ask the question, we have a tremendous opportunity. As a government, we came in with the intention of not only rescuing Barbados, not only transforming Barbados, but creating opportunities for greater inclusion of the ordinary Barbadian in the prosperity of the country, by giving them opportunities to participate in contracts, to get work, to be able to sell their goods and their services. When I believe it was Mr. Headley who shared that when you collected the derelict vehicles, you were able to give work to 11 contractors. I'm asking this question because I've got contractors in my constituency with skips, trucks, plants, lots of other things that would be very useful to the Ministry of Environment. And I want to ask the question, how has the ministry approached the issue of the inclusion of the ordinary person so that they can participate in the rebuilding of Barbados, whether it's in your botanicals work or your general cleaning work, and how many people and small businesses have you been able to empower and help allow them to participate in the opportunities within the ministry?
Before Mr. Alves, I let Mr. Alves speak to the numbers. Minister, you would know that an effort was made in 2019 to engage a number of small contractors. I don't want to say small black contractors, even though I'll be speaking the truth. But you know, in this society, people believe that we are good workers, but people seem to believe that we don't have the capability or the capacity to be even called contractors. People believe that the entrepreneur, the men who combine the factors of production, were born with these special qualities. Yet all the leading engineers across the country are black men, working class men. When these people stop working on the title of supervisor and junior manager, never directors, and set up their own businesses, just cleaning grass and cutting trees. And I'm not saying that because I perceive the task as superficial, because I am a student of history and a good one too. Don't ask somebody to tell me that. And I know what Bush and Waste did prior to the 1930s, 1937. I know that some people only recognize when you leave a place untidy. So if you feel like you're stupid, you could ignore what is happening in Farnham's Land or in the Orleans. It's only when somebody start to catch fever up in Strathclyde or in these communities that you recognize that if you have unhygienic conditions all around you, it is not going to affect the person that is 2 inches away from a mosquito, right? Or somebody use some measurement and tell you what distance a mosquito can fly. When I know a mosquito can get in the backseat of a car and travel from St. Lucie down to Oyster in a couple of seconds. So you don't have to fly, you can just hide out the car seat and get down there. So these things occur, but people who don't stretch their mind sometimes make these such tasks insignificant. Now, the reality is, I have my views, and probably, I don't know who made me the way that I am, but I have my views. We have to have that program, and I will do my best to see how I can convince the powers that be to see the relevance of having that program. But Madam Chair, sometimes we have those programs, especially if you rub shoulders with ordinary people who know being blessed with the title contractor. Some people always believe that somebody buying a brandy for you, or somebody get an extra piece of money to put in your pocket, and you're gonna have these fears of a police officer coming to your house about 3:15 in the morning and escorting you, or some officer of the government trying to demonstrate that he's prudent and honest, and then he wants to set you as an example, put you on the front page of the newspaper, not to go to university, but to go to Dodge. And I am also cognizant of that. But I am a strong supporter of the concept of the enfranchisement of small black business people across Barbados. It does not mean that I don't respect Lebanese. That is superficial nonsense. It does not mean that I don't respect Asian people, white people, Europeans, whatever. It has nothing to do with that. Because when you start to have discussions of this, of that type, people's lungs and all the saliva dries up, and the heartbeat intensifies, and they begin to retreat and distance themselves from you because they believe that you're some pariah coming to do harm to people who are not of the same social type that you are. But that is not my intention. My intention is that I know the disenfranchisement that we have experienced. I believe that it is a principle that the government should stand on, give some of these contractors a chance, and I will do my best to argue as objectively as I can with the expectation that nobody would distort the interest which I have in seeing that small business people get an opportunity. I've seen businessmen, small black businessmen, in working as contractors, purchase equipment. I've seen them working beyond the call of duty, that they would make an arrangement to work, and you would expect someone to go home at 6 o'clock. I've seen them putting up lights and working in the night, taking risks. I've seen some of them on the landfill working. I've seen some of them going around the mount in the landfill in a very adventurous manner, right, going around the borders with fire all around equipment and everything. So I know that they possess the qualities that are required to do a job, not just to sit behind a desk in a khaki pants and a white shirt every day, and big boots, and got pens in the top pocket and say he's a contractor. And I got people working hard and getting monkey money, right? These are people who actually put their hands in the dirt like everybody else to make sure that the job is done well. So I could give the minister the assurance that I will keep pressing for it. Hopefully, when we get over the estimates, I would expect her also to at least bring some level of enlightenment to the decisions that we need to stay online with the principle of the enfranchisement of our own people. It's not race. It's not a racist position, as some people who don't know the definition of the term sometimes try to say that it is, but it's a genuine, humane approach. I think that we need to redress those imbalances in the economic order as well.
Oh, no, I thought Mr. Alves was going to share numbers.
Yes, Minister, thank you. There were various programs where we engaged contractors. For the beautification program, where we had significant amount of cleaning of derelict vehicles as well as debushing, we had 23 contractors for that. We had a component where we beautified after cleaning, and there were some landscape contractors. There were 7 in number in landscape contractors. In order to supply the quantity of plants, we engaged some small nurseries to supply us with seedlings to replenish the stock which we had utilized in these areas. So a number of contractors are employed, not only those with heavy equipment, but those with small nurseries, carpenters, sometimes masons, electricians, plumbers. We use all of these areas in creating the parks and the spaces and assisting us with whatever our objectives are.
All right, thank you very much. And my last question has to do, going back to the same issue of business, but more in relation to environmental opportunities. One of the things, too, I feel strongly about, because I recognize that this is a problem with some of our small entrepreneurs, that sometimes when they are asked to step forward to put a proposal, they sometimes may not be good at pricing and may not be good at the preparation of a proper project proposal. So I'm trusting that the other ministries and in collaboration with yourselves could provide a service to help them to know how to better present themselves so that they can participate in the opportunity, because we have to help grow them at the same time. On the issue of the environment, I'm very fascinated by any opportunity that we have in this country to be able to increase trade and economic activity on the ground, because that is what is going to help generate the jobs and provide people with a more positive life. I believe in reading about the whole environmental move across the world, it is believed that it is going to present opportunities for new types of businesses to emerge. So I just wanted to get a sense from you, what are some of the potential areas, if you can? I know it's not budget. I didn't see anything in the budget on that in the new areas, but if you know some of the new potential areas for entrepreneurship in the environmental realm that perhaps we could start to direct our people in our constituencies to consider, that would be helpful.
Minister, I don't believe you have forgotten. You were very much at the genesis of the planning of in the new government of the encouragement of small black businesses to emerge. Minister Sutherland, responsible for small business as well, also was present. And we made an agreement then to have a training program to help any of these small businessmen. What really happened at that stage is that the EPD, for example, with the small business contractors who approached the EPD management agreed that they would work along with them to help them to arrive at pricing and outline to them the kind of ethics, the kind of business ethics that are required in applying to the EPD. The NCC also did the same. So they had discussions in advance of becoming employed within these agencies. The EPD also went a little further. Apart from Facebook, they also have ads on television as well, encouraging small businesses to apply, especially in the removal of derelict houses and derelict vehicles. So I'm certainly, I want to show you with your knowledge and your background, if in any way you can see that you can contribute to helping us to enhance the skills. We can work across the ministries in a collaborative effort to help with the training, further continue to train these persons, because I know that you will be concerned how they keep their accounts as well. You like those specific areas, and I want to welcome your assistance in helping the ministry to become more and more efficient.
No, you all will be doing fine. I was just making sure that that was happening, because I know that some of my people struggle a little bit with the proposals and they charge too much and then find that they can't participate because they haven't done it properly. See, so it was only from that perspective.
I don't know if you had that experience, but I always tell the management that you are helping someone to grow. You need to hold their hands. And if somebody has the pricing way beyond what is considered to be average, sit down and reason with them. You don't have to be the scientist. You don't have to be the master of syllogisms or logic. It is straight, basic, common sense, almost impulsive. You can just look back at precedents and you will get guidelines on how much a person usually charges for the cleaning of grass. Not grass that is 20 feet tall and big oak trees. Grass is 6 or 7 feet tall. If people over a number of years clean it at that price and that was accepted, you start off there. And having a capitalist mentality, sometimes you might negotiate and reason, and you might end up trying to pay nothing to the workers. But I will hope that those principles don't obtain within the departments which I'm responsible for.
All done, member. Honorable
Madam Chair, one of my officers, Mr. Travis Sinkler, wants to speak and expand the discussion in relation to green jobs within the economy, and I think that it is pertinent to the Ministry of the Environment, and I believe that we should not, in an ancestral manner, discuss these matters within the ministry itself. So we want to share his views with you, which is the views of the entire ministry itself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Travis Sinkler, Head of the Policy Research, Planning and Information Unit. In response to the question regarding jobs in the environmental sector, the ministry is embarking on a survey in collaboration with the Ministries of Labor and the Economic Affairs Ministry to actually conduct a first survey on the state of green and blue jobs in Barbados. Now, the issue of green jobs and blue jobs is nothing new. There is an environmental sector that has been around for a number of decades in response primarily to the issue of pollution, the issue of natural resources management, the issues of energy, the issues of water and wastewater management. So what we are embarking on, I believe it will be in the last quarter of this year, to conduct that survey through the existing labor force survey. What I will also say, we've done some initial work on the trade front, just to see the trade balance regarding environmental goods and services. Now that gives an indication as to economic activity happening in the environmental sector. In Barbados, we have a tenfold deficit in terms of imports and exports of environmental goods. We imported, last survey we did just around 2007, 2008, we were importing approximately $256 million of environmental goods. And that again cuts across things such as clean technologies, energy, wastewater, and so forth. On the flip side, we were only exporting $30 million US. We are going to undertake a new trade balance study as well in collaboration with the labor force survey, because that will give us a picture as to the idea of what the status is, where we need to do interventions in terms of labor market policies, training and capacity development, but also in terms of how, and if there are niche areas, if we could inspire persons to get involved in new areas in the environmental industry. The last thing I will say is that as I mentioned earlier, these fields are really nothing new. We just haven't packaged them as the environmental industry. So again, electricians, the work that's being done by the Samuel Jackman Prescott Institute in new areas in renewable energy and so forth. What our plumbers are doing in terms of wastewater treatment and whatnot. So there are a range of jobs and services. And again, that study, with the support of the United Nations Partnership of Action on Green Economy, UNPAGE, we'll be conducting that work this year. Thank you.
Honorable member for St. Michael, Christchurch West Central.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to say a pleasant good morning to the minister. He has been one of those ministers that I have admired even before I entered these august chambers, and I want to commend him for his unreserved fight for what he calls the poor black man. And I'm happy and honored to be able to serve alongside him in this unreserved and committed fight. My question, and I think that the best person right now to answer is Nigel Jones. But my question relates to the fact that there is a trust by this government to plant 1 million trees. A very noble and important initiative, bearing in mind that we have a climate crisis, global warming seen to be threatening our very existence. My question to him is, in Barbados, as I traverse from St. Philip, passing through obviously epicenter of Christchurch, West Central, as far as St. Lucie, the only female parish in Barbados, full of fertility. The only thing that is not fertile is the citrus trees. We have a problem in Barbados as it relates to our citrus fruit trees. There is a fungus that I have been talking about for a very long time, called a biospheric fungus, that is destroying all the fruit trees in Barbados. Now, I understand the drive for us to plant trees, but we can't be planting trees, 1 million, and at the same time, all the trees are dying from this fungus. We are talking about a botanical garden, a gem of St. Michael. We are talking about a herbarium, a taxonomy center, all these new fancy scientific dimensions. I want to know what is the plan to treat this fungus and other citrus fruit diseases that is threatening to destroy our food security and certainly destroy our ability to commit ourselves to 1 million fruit trees or 1 million trees across Barbados. And what are the additional plans that you have in place for the botanical garden in terms of growing and planting trees there? So I really want to know what is the plan to treat this fungus or this citrus disease that's affecting all the citrus fruits in Barbados? And secondly, what are your plans in terms of the botanical gardens and how you can enlighten Barbadians as to the new experience there? Thank you.
Minister, unfortunately, the statement is salacious.
Very salacious.
The statement, Minister, the statement that you made is fallacious. There is no quantitative data that is available. There is no methodology grounded in observation or even speculation that indicates that, well, I don't know which part of Christchurch this department planted trees, because the ministry, we have very competent officers, and I'm sure that Mr. Jones alone would not speak to it. I would also ask Dr. Braffett, who is directly responsible for the coordination of the 1 million trees and more program. We've been doing all that we can to keep the average amount of trees that are likely to face early mortality rate down below even the average that is expected universally. So I'm a little surprised to hear that. I really believe that he wanted to make the presentation a little contentious and kind of push that element into the whole presentation, which was overshadowed by the fact that he made mention of this fallacious point. So I will let the officers speak to a more informed position on what is happening with the tree planting program.
Well, morning, Nigel Jones, the manager of Botanical Gardens, and I will just speak in a non-scientific way to the issue of citrus greening, which is also known as HLB or Hum Lum Bim. This is a Chinese word. Actually, the disease originated originated in China. And it is caused basically by the Psilid fly, Psilid PSYLLID fly, which is specific. It's a specific feeder on citrus, and when you say citrus, it means limes, lemons, mandarins, tangerine, shaddocks, and so on. And while feeding, it injects pathogenic bacteria in the plant system, which actually weakens the immune system, let's say any of us. So what that does is to reduce concentration levels of alkaloids and tannins and resins, which are normally stored in high concentrations at the divisional size of the divisional areas of the plants. So being unable to fight the disease, you usually get things like the symptoms are characterized by crown dieback, on the size leaves, things like necrosis, which is rotten, chlorosis, yellow of the leaves, and so on. So the mere fact that we were trying to use the different pesticides in terms of treatment, things like the organophosphates and the caramides and so on, but they're not working. We tried some biological control, again, that is not working. So what the Agriculture Ministry and myself, we came up with more or less a suggestion. So we're bringing clean material from different parts, Miami and so on, and the soil is leading that. So within the garden system, we will not be introducing any citrus until we are sure that the material is cleaned up. In the meantime, we are starting to culling some of the infected plants, I think we started in St. Philip, start a program, but that is more or less still rudimentary.
Could you repeat that again? I didn't hear it.
No, we are looking at culling some of the infected plants. Because the new strains, we are making sure the new strains that we're introducing into Barbados don't suffer the same consequences that the infected plants have. So even though we are looking at the issue of chemical treatments, we're recognizing that success is not really paying off, and it's very expensive too. So they said when with time, I guess within the next couple of months or so, we'll be able to tell the public how far we have gotten with the actual program in terms of having clean material available to the public. I will not speak to the issue of the tree planting program, as the minister just said, that the chairman of the coordinator of the program, he will speak to that issue, that component.
Good morning. Good morning to all. It is indeed an honor and a pleasure to be here and to have the opportunity to say a few words about a tree planting project. Thank you, Minister. The idea of planting trees to counteract the challenges of climate change is an idea which was initiated in 2006 by the United Nations Environmental Programme, in which it was conceptualized or perceived that there are some 3 trillion trees in the world today, and if we could plant another trillion, we could in fact counteract some of the challenges of climate change by removing from the atmosphere the carbon dioxide which accumulates as a result of human activity, including the burning of fossil fuel. This initiative, therefore, of planting 1 million trees in Barbados is part of a global mission and a global initiative that is taking place all around the world. United States, China, Japan, Belgium, Germany, Peru, all the countries of the world today, especially in the context of those that are major contributors to contamination and to the generation of greenhouse gases, are planting trees. Here in Barbados, we initiated this project last October with the planting by our Prime Minister of a soursop tree in St. Lucie. And since then, we've continued this mission of planting trees, mainly at schools, but in other areas, with the intention to do our part to counteract the challenges of climate change. We're planting trees for purpose. We're not just planting trees, we're planting trees that can help us to satisfy our commitment in signing the Paris Accord in 2005, but also so that trees can in fact sequester carbon and help us to conserve our natural resources. We're planting trees also for economic reasons. We're planting trees for food security. We're planting trees to promote ecotourism. We're planting trees for entrepreneurship. We're planting trees to promote social cohesion. And we find that in communities that plant trees together have the social cohesion that is necessary to build community. And we're planting trees for recreation, trees for shade. And we're planting trees in schools because we think it's very important that the young people understand their environmental responsibilities. After all, it is the young who are going to benefit from the changes we make with respect to climate change, or are going to suffer the consequences if we do nothing. And therefore, we are seeing this as an important initiative in changing the environmental awareness of Barbadians and getting people to understand more clearly that we as a small country need to do all we can to counteract climate change. Because while we speak about the violence of hurricanes and the increasing challenge to coastal erosion, we also need to consider the fact of sea level rise. And that is a country that is small and subject to the potential of sea level rise, we should do all that we can to help. I believe that this project has the potential to create a new awareness in Barbados of the need to care for our environment. And therefore, we are doing all that we can to meet the challenge of creating this platform of tree planting, something that we have not had as a platform in Barbados before. We have had a platform of planting sugarcane, but a platform of planting trees for orchards, for fruits, planting soursop, planting mango, planting bananas, planting guava, and also recovering a lot of our ecosystems that can help generate opportunities for ecotourism and for promoting the importance of the environment for our food security, and also to provide a place that the monkeys that are invading our homes and our areas of development can go back to their natural habitats and have food to use. This is a critical issue, and this is an important project. Thank you for the opportunity to say a few words about it.
I want to thank you, Mr. Jones, for your response. And you said specifically that you would be involved in exercise after you recognize, of course, that there is a problem. To clean the material, new material that is brought into the country, you said that culling would be the new order of day. And also, I suspect you would have thought about fungicide treatment to the plants as well. What I want to assure the minister that I know when a leaf is old, I know when it is dry. And from my observation from Barbados, I know there is a problem with citrus tree and fruit trees. So I'm happy that your officers are well on top of this matter, and I know that they will do everything in Barbados to ensure that this problem is solved. My other question got to do with biodiversity. If we are talking about being able to militate any climate change, any global warming, and to be able to resist the existential threat that we are faced with, we have to talk biodiversity. Biodiversity as it relates, and we have 3 specific biological species that I want to talk about today. Biodiversity as it relates to our sea turtle and sea turtle project. What are we going to do with our green monkeys they are an important part of the ecosystem. And the Philodactylus that I'm so in love with, which persons will call the leaf-toed gecko. These are important conversations if you are talking about the survival of our ecosystems as it relates to climate change. I want to know your ministry's plan, of course, to be involved in these projects, and how are we going to use biodiversity as a driving force against climate change.
Thank you, Minister. I didn't deny, I was nowhere in a state of negation that there are problems with fungus. What I was saying is that you indicated that the trees were dying. I believe that was a statement that is a generalization and likely to give the impression to the Barbadian public and even the leadership of this party that we were pursuing a program and that we had 100% death mortality rate for the trees.
Before you move on that, Honorable Minister, and before Mr. Brathwaite moves,
Dr. Brathwaite.
Dr. Brathwaite, are the individual residents, private households, are there going to be offered trees to plant? My thinking is that the chances, we spoke about the fallacious comment and so on, of dying. The chances of a householder maintaining a tree may be, to some extent, a little better than putting the tree out there, in that they have the time to water it, they have the time to care it. Are the householders going to be a part of it, or is it open spaces and public properties?
Thank you very much for this question. We believe that this is not a government project, this is a project of Barbados. We would like to get all households and the entire population involved in the planting of trees. After all, at the end of the day, planting a tree represents a personal commitment and a contribution to the general effort, the global effort of fighting climate change, but it's also a contribution to your own nutrition, if it's a fruit tree, or as a contribution to shade, as a contribution to conservation. There's several contributions that trees make.
I get
and
that, but
so
are we going to
our
be
idea
supplying them as well?
is to ensure that trees are available to the general population. The NCC is working out the relationship that will be developed in this regard, because at the end of the day, the Commission still has to make a living or a profit from their efforts in order to continue to do what they do, which is provide seedlings for the population. The trees are being offered at current cost basis, but I believe that over time, if we can get sponsors, we may be able to offer some trees free to the public, where we can get sponsorship. And this is where we're working very hard with the private sector in those communities where they reside and where they operate, to provide assistance to those communities, and then we can provide trees at a lower cost or free to the public. But we're encouraging people to plant trees.
Because soon after the project started, I got a WhatsApp from one of my constituents actually offering to sell soursop trees. We spoke, I think the Honorable Minister spoke about entrepreneurship, but they were actually offering to sell trees, probably to the government, to be a part of the program. This is one of the reasons as well that I was asking.
I think Mr. Alzo indicated that they were working with some of the small contractors already in nursery development, and therefore this could be a possible way of that collaboration, reaching a mutual cooperative arrangement where small contractors, small producers could sell trees to the NCC, and the NCC then make them available to the public.
Wonderful, thank you.
So I think there's a lot of opportunities here, and over time, I think there'll be job opportunities resulting from this tree project because of the increase in nursery capacity that is needed to make it a reality.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In response to the question asked by the representative from Christchurch. We have a biodiversity program, and that program is spread across two sections of the ministry. To some extent, the natural heritage department, a special unit within the ministry that deals with specifically with biodiversity. Unfortunately, that officer is not here, so I'm going to ask the Officer Marshal to speak on the subject as well. What I can tell you, and since one of the specific questions was in relation to endangered species like the green monkey, we are fully aware that there are a number of challenges that we are having.
I don't know that that's endangered.
In the light that
they are in danger.
Huh?
They are in danger.
Endangered because I don't like to use words in a static manner. They are endangered because that the Barbadian public, who are enjoying new comforts, believe, after disrupting the habitat of the green monkeys, now believe that knowing that there are the persons who remove all the trees from the landscape, that the green monkeys are now finding themselves into urban communities, and they're not dealing with fruit so much. They're probably trying to rob them out of chicken legs. All of a sudden, there's a major call. I've been receiving letters and calls asking me to rid the country of the green monkey or reduce the green monkey population substantially. So I have to make an administrative decision on that. There are other international bodies in the very opposite manner. We are bound by conventional arrangements that we are supposed to protect the green monkeys. The Ministry of Agriculture has one responsibility. They purchase the green monkey tails for a small sum of money, and this is a policy that continues from almost in succession from one government to the other. So you pay a small sum, obviously saying you don't say kill the monkey, but you pay a small sum for the monkey tail, and the only way to get the monkey is by shooting it. The other ministry has to protect it. These are some decisions that we have to make. Mr. Marshall will speak more of a technical nature as well to this. We have we have alien species that we are paying some attention to. Just like some years ago, we had the African snail. We now have challenges of the lionfish. We have the problems of the black rat, which is a term that a lot of Barbadians know. So we are fully aware. We have the leaf-toed gecko, which is endangered. I remember explaining once that species is now, the few of them that remain is now in an area, St. Philip, was up there, up close to the Defense Force. Apparently because of predators over a number of years going after them, they find themselves now on the borders, probably just close to the ocean, behind the rocks at Paragon. We are now trying to protect them as much as we can. We obviously, as I told you earlier, the ass is another one. The last report I had is that only one remain. We have to look and see how we can increase that population. I'm told that there are some of them in St. Kitts and Nevis and some of the other parts of the Caribbean. I don't think that Barbados to totally rid themselves of them. There's lots of discussions about the guinea bird. There are also discussions about many birds like the mockingbird as well. I'm told by two professors from the University of West Indies that they have some on their lands and their estate These are birds that we used to see before, yellow-breast birds and things like that. I don't know the Latin or the Greek words that is attached to this that makes people feel that they're bright, but I know how to identify them based on indigenous knowledge. So I can give you the assurance that we are, Minister, that we are conscious that we have some responsibilities, not only in the area of birds and animals, also in relation to plants. I will allow the officers to speak in a more detailed manner about biodiversity.
Good afternoon again. I'm not planning to speak on specific species, as it were, even though a few of them were mentioned, but to bring a more practical explanation as to the role of biodiversity as we seek to become more climate resilient. Our trees are a very key component of a program if we are to seek to be able to survive a Category 4 or Category 5 event. The trees will actually take the brunt of that wind, and the trees breaking and so forth play a part in protecting the houses that are in existence. Those same trees are also a very key component of ensuring that our landscape does not become so denuded and that we are not those who are suffering more severely from desertification and drought. Our trees within the gully ecosystem also slow down the water, increasing the rate at which you can get that infiltration occurring and the volume of water that you can get going into the system. We've been doing the work in Holetown and Trents, and included in there, we have installed grass swales. The reason why we've ensured that there's grass growing in there is that the grass also slows down the water and allows some of the sediment to drop out so that we can reduce the sediment and the nutrient loading to the nearshore environment. We're also working at the mouth of the outlet by the Holetown Police Station in expanding the pond there and reintroducing mangroves so that you can get a more holistic ecosystem function in those areas, so that you're essentially talking about going from the ridge and the roof and the household to the reef, in which we are seeking to reduce the impacts of land-based sources of pollution, in which we're trying to get more water to go to ground, and that then also allows us to get a greater appreciation for the role of biodiversity overall and in general in what it is we're trying to do, so that if we're managing our natural system from a watershed and an ecosystem-based approach, we're also using that as an opportunity to educate persons on the importance of maintaining these features and what these do to improve resilience from a climate perspective.
This would sound like donkey conversation, but what about cuscus grass? When it was growing up, cuscus grass kept the road in check. You hardly see it now, and the bush is overgrowing everywhere. Is there a move to bring that back?
We've certainly been encouraging it. Part of the demise of the cuscus grass and other similar grasses was the introduction of mechanized cane harvesting, where they removed that in an effort to get the machinery into the field for easier access. What we've been promoting is to see that come back, because it will allow us to protect the edge of the road, prevent that water from running off at times of heavy rainfall, which will then influence both the blocking of drains as well as the loading of our groundwater and our nearshore water with the nutrients as a result of that. It means, therefore, that we're working with other ministries, including Transport Works and Maintenance, including the Ministry of Agriculture. We had a discussion quite recently on looking to try and address the issue of suck wells and clearing suck wells and allowing those to function, so that we can get that more holistic circumstance in which we're seeing a proper functioning of both the built and the natural environment towards what it is we're seeking to do in terms of improved environmental management.
Just one Ricardo, no, you're there. Is there any plan afoot to have mangrove network along the seashore as it relates to sea level rise and stuff to protect that area?
Well, mangroves certainly are an important species. I'm not sure if we can have a network without significantly impacting the beaches as we know them. But if you look around, you will see with the project that BTI has been doing in the Constitution River area, you would have seen a reintroduction of mangroves there. We're also doing it with the ecosystem-based adaptation at the Whole Town area, and we're also doing some revegetation in the Whole Town Lagoon area after we would have dredged the lagoon. We had to actually clear an area of vegetation to be able to get access to the lagoon with the machinery that we needed so that we could deepen the lagoon back to more of its original depth to increase its capacity to take stormwater and reduce incidents of flooding in the Whole Town and Trents area. But we're also replanting vegetation there, looking predominantly at mayhaw, at red mangrove, at almond and that sort of thing, the sorts of species that are associated with those areas. And we are certainly going to be making recommendations once the ecosystem-based adaptation project bears the fruits that we're anticipating in the Whole Town area, to be able to do that sort of thing where we have other outlets to sea, where we traditionally would have had mangroves, that because of the development that occurred between the 60s and the 80s in Barbados, that would have seen a lot of those mangroves removed.
Thank you. I think one of your team wanted to speak.
Good afternoon, Chair. With respect to the question of carbon sequestration asked by Minister Ford, this is a very remote question, and I don't know if many people in this room will know how carbon is actually stored in the plant system. It's a physiological process where you get, because 50% of the wood is carbon. So you get specialized cells. So the question of biodiversity, you get specialized parenchyma cells blocking the vessels to trap the carbon for centuries. This would be angiosperms or like hardwoods. In gymnosperms or pines and firs, you get a similar process called pit aspiration where you get the carbon cannot escape. So sequestration, you have to understand it to appreciate it. People just speak about the trees storing carbon and in terms of climate change and so on. The other issue, that there was another question that Minister Ford asked. In terms of biodiversity, anyway, let me leave it at that. Okay. Just the sequestration process. And bear in mind that the faster plant, younger plants sequester carbon much faster than older plants, because older plants would reach an equilibrium stage where they hardly absorb or dissolve carbon. So your thicket and pole stage plants would actually consume large sums of carbon. In fact, what we want to do in the Botanic Garden in the very near future is to involve students from university and the community college to be looking at, to find a model in terms of how we measure carbon sequestration, looking at diameter increment and height increment, and then basic area. And if you can work out that, then you know how much carbon each tree is actually storing per year. Every year you measure your diameter, you measure your height, and then you have an idea how much the carbon is being stored, and then match it to how much carbon is being the emissions from cars and so on. But that's something in the making that we have to come up with, and we'll have to discuss that with the UE and the community college, and of course with the other scientific departments of agriculture and so on. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair, matters related to the storing of carbon probably is a necessity for us to expand the discussion in this area a little more. I have with me Officer Ron Goodridge, and he's been involved in matters related to climate change and meeting the international obligations on matters related to climate change, and he obviously would have some responsibility to how Barbados measure the extraction of the emissions and the storage of the carbon, and in what are the international commitments that we have made in relation to the reduction of gas emissions in the environment itself. The ministry, I think, need to explain these things to this chamber as well as to the general public of Barbados.
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ron Goodridge, Environmental Officer at the Ministry of Environment and National Beautification. As the Minister indicated, Barbados has a number of obligations as a signatory to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The most recent international treaty that Barbados would have signed would have been the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, and that was done in it was agreed at the Conference of the Parties in 2015, and Barbados would have signed and ratified that convention, that Paris Agreement, in 2016. Part and parcel of that agreement is that Barbados must produce what is called a nationally determined contribution, which essentially is a document which outlines the actions and plans and programs and projects that the government will undertake to address climate change, to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions, to enhance its resilience to climate change, and also to adapt its economy and its populace to the adverse impacts of climate change. So we would have prepared our first nationally determined contribution, or NDC, in 2015, and right now we're required to update that document this year, given what had happened with the initial submission of all the NDCs from the parties to the convention. When the accounting was done, it was still realized that the world was on a trajectory to realize a 3 degrees increase in temperature, whereas the goal in the Paris Agreement is to achieve a 1.5 degree temperature increase. So therefore, all the countries have agreed to update their NDCs and submit them this year. Hopefully, we can, after the accounting is done with the new NDCs that are submitted this year, we will be on track for the world to realize a 1.5 degree temperature increase. So that's one of the things that the ministry is undertaking this year. We have partnered with the Inter-American Development Bank, and they have provided grant resources to the government of Barbados. The cabinet agreed that we would partner with the IDB to undertake this work to update Barbados's NDC. Also part and parcel of that, as the minister would have alluded, we also have to give some indication or what they call transparency and how we measure, report, and verify that what we said that we will do, that we have done. So that's called the MRV framework, the Measurement, Reporting, and Verification Framework. So we also have to build our capacity in that respect as well. We're also engaged in a project as well to design a project proposal to submit to an entity, a mechanism called the Capacity Building Initiative for Transparency. We're also engaged in that with the IDB, and we will be submitting a proposal to the Global Environment Facility to support the establishment of Barbados's MRV framework so that we can give the world and show our partners that we are achieving the goals and targets that we have set. This current government has a goal of achieving fossil fuel free by 2030, and that's one of the main reasons why we are updating our NDC as well, because we have to reflect that in our NDC to show that how we are going to achieve that, and therefore it is important that we also share that information with our international partners.
Thank you. Oh dear. All done, Adrian? No. Honorable Member for St. Lucie. This will be the last one before the break, and then we'll come back in regular order.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to the chamber, especially our guests and hardworking public servants from the Ministry of the Environment and National Beautification, led ably by Minister, my colleague Prescott. As I look through the manifesto of the Barbados Labour Party, our last manifesto, I noticed that there are 4 ministries or 4 key areas which fall under the ministries of health, and in this order: energy and water resources, transport, works and maintenance, and environment and national beautification. And as I reflected, I think that these are the 4 ministries which have been constantly under the microscope in this particular administration. Today we have the Ministry of the Environment and National Beautification with us, and each of these ministries have worked hard and continue to work extremely hard. But I also know that this particular ministry here today, led by Minister Prescott, has had one of the toughest tasks, or several tough tasks, in the short period which they have been together. From garbage trucks to issues at Mangrove and all of that. And my particular question, first of all, my first question, and I will only deal with 2 sections.
Let you leave it at the first question, and when we come back from the break, we'll do the rest.
Pardon?
I'm going to allow you your other 2 questions when we come back from lunch. So
I'm going to be short, very short.
Sure, you say. Go ahead.
Very short. I want to know if the answers will be I want to know what are the plans, Minister, in relation to the Mangrove landfill. You know, we had a couple of fires there. I want to know what are the plans for that in relation to as we move forward, because that can be very, very challenging. And secondly, I want to know from the National Conservation Commission, another area which works very, very hard, what are your plans in relation to beautification across Barbados?
Madam Chair, some of the strategic approaches that we have applied in recent times in relation to the amendment to the Returnable Containers Act is one of the strategic approaches that we have used in order to reduce the bulk waste on the landfill. So obviously, with the separation of waste itself, there will be a major reduction in the amount of waste that will be going there. That is easily said, but the reality that is going to take us, not more than a reasonable period, because we're going to do it as quickly as we can, but already we indicated that we're going to have an intensive educational program, sensitizing the Barbadian public, trying to help them change their habits and their cultural patterns in general, with the separation of waste at source, so that some of that, what we now call garbage, will be put to a useful purpose by going through the whole recycling program. We also have the problem where, as Mr. Marshall indicated, the so-called recycling plants are really brokers. We don't have the real recycling plants around. There are just a few of them. They don't take the material and reuse the material to become anything productive thereafter. What we have to do in most cases is to export the material, and all that we do is carry through a process and try to reduce the bulky nature of them so that it'll be suitable to fit into containers to export into external markets. And those markets, markets have to remain accessible. The reality is that from time to time there are encumbrances in those external markets where other sovereignties make a decision, the private sectors and some of them make decisions. Sometimes they get cheaper supplies from alternative markets, supply markets. The reality is that we're facing some challenges with the landfill that can be agreed upon. And of course, the challenges we have up there relate to the 5 or so fires that we've had in the last 2 years at the landfill. Every now and then, because of putting the bulk of the waste up there, including used tires and all other things, some of those things are combustive, and we every now and then, as a consequence of the suppression of the gas on the landfill, and with the heat intensity, you have an explosion on the landfill itself, and then new techniques are required in order to help those fires to subside. And what we're learning out of those experiences, that we have to have the appropriate equipment to resolve these problems. In the meantime, we are working on having alternative locations so that if we have to make a shift, I believe that Leon will be in a better position to tell you exactly the things that we're doing at the landfill, and what we're doing in terms of not only the disposal of the waste, but also the collection of the waste itself. I will let the officer speak to the question.
Hi, good afternoon. The Mangrove Pond landfill, there are several ways in which fires are caused. The actual landfill tipping face does not really experience fires very often. The majority of fires that are experienced at the landfill come from about three different ways. One way is by brush fires that advance on the landfill because somebody is burning in the immediate vicinity of the landfill. It catches the bush or the brush in the vicinity, and then it comes on and migrates onto the older cells. So we've had that problem in the past. The other way is the tires. Of course, where the tires are located is on top of an old dump. The original dump that was at the landfill, this is not an engineered landfill, but it's the original dump that was opened in the 80s, is where the tires are located now. They're at the summit of that dump, which we call phase 1. Previous fires continue to combust, like underneath it is still burning, so occasionally you do get a flare up and fire. So in terms of the tires specifically, we are in the process, or we will soon be tendering for a shredder. We did have a shredder in the past. It was not replaced. For a number of years, previously we were asking for monies to purchase a shredder. The whole idea of a shredder is to reduce the volume. It's not a final solution, but it is a measure to reduce the volume of tires because tires are very voluminous, take up a lot of room. And the whole idea is if we get the tires shred down to about 3 inches or so, we could potentially mix that with topsoil at a 3-to-1 ratio and use it as a cover. You won't be able to get rid of all the tires, but it will just buy us some time until there is a final decision on the tires, because currently we are running out of space, and so this is going to give us a little bit of time and buy us a little bit of time. In terms of the landfill fires, there were options. Yes, there were options for the tires that we have explored in the past. One of the most lucrative options would have been the cement plant, which would basically be complete consumption of the tire with no residual. But we have had several discussions with the plant, and we have not heard back recently, but we're hoping that that would be a viable option. That's actually the most viable option. But in the meantime, we can't continue to accumulate them, and we have been granted some funds to purchase a shredder, which we'll be looking into shortly. And there was also another option which was explored. A detailed report was written in 2008. about potentially using the tires in a rubberized asphalt. That would include the removal, because tires have several components, it would include the removal of all of the steel belts and all of the fluff, because tires are not just rubber. So there's a whole mechanization that has to go with that, and then they will be reduced to crumb and put into asphalt. So that was another option as well. But that has not gone forward. So in the meantime, what the authority is looking to do is to reduce the volume so we can better handle the tires. We receive about 8,000 tires a month, close to 110,000 tires a year. So we are backed into a corner right now, and we have no choice but to shred them and try to reduce the volume and do something with them until a final policy decision is made about tires. In terms of the landfill, as I said before, we don't get fires on the landfill, usually unless there's a migration of fire from the outside. We have received the equipment that we would require that would significantly reduce the potential for fire. We have 2 compactors now. We have duplication. We work 12 hours a day. So we work a compactor in the morning, compactor in the evening, and that reduces the void space in the landfill. And then it then reduces the potential for oxygen to infiltrate to the subsurface and create fires, because one of the main problems you have in a landfill when you do get frequent fires is the infiltration of oxygen, where there is some smoldering and then all of a sudden you get a blow up because the fire has received fuel in order to burn. So with compaction, we received a compactor in January. It's about 86,000 pounds, and so we are compacting. We already have the 816, which is the older compactor, and they work in tandem. We also have the D9. The D9 is a dozer. It places, so we have a lot of weight up there, and so therefore you shouldn't get very many fires in the landfill. The only thing about the tire shredding and potentially landfilling the tires is that it increases the fire potential now on the landfill. This is the reason why we're looking to mix the tire shreds with soil at a 3-to-1 ratio to reduce the fire potential and to, as I said, utilize it as a stopgap until a final policy decision is made.
Thank you, ma'am. Could you state your name?
Leona Dean, SSA.
Okay, thank you. All right, we will continue after the break. Honorable member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I beg to move that you do now report progress to His Honor the Speaker and beg leave to sit again.
Seconder. Question is, I do not report to Honorable Speaker progress and ask for leave to sit again. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. All honorable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of the Standing Finance Committee has reported progress and requests leave to sit again. Honorable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the sitting be suspended until 2:45 p.m.
The question is that this honorable chairman be suspended until 2:45 p.m. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honorable chamber stands suspended until 2:45 p.m.